Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Gukarastvo Andhakaro Vai Rukarasva Nivartakaha Andhakara Nirodhitvat Gururitya Vidhiyate Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvisha Vahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Ahamasmi sadabhami kadachit nahamapriyaha brahmaiva aham atasiddham Satchidananda Lakshanam. So as this very beautiful, very important verse indicates, and we've talked about it already, but just to revise it, Ahamasmi sadabhami kadachitnaham apriyaha brahmaiva aham atasiddham satchidananda lakshanam. So what it really means is that we all have a goal in our life. Everyone, even Pashupakshis, they also have the same goal, but they have to wait a little longer time. But as human beings, we have arrived, we have an opportunity to seek our goal, and the goal is to find Ishvara. This should be very clear to the Vedantins. There is no other goal. And in my conduct of my life, in our conduct of our lives, we are really seeking this goal, but in ways which is not as direct as we would like. So for instance, and so here the other thing that to look at is to seek Ishvara means what? What does that really mean? You have to think about it. If our goal is to understand and to seek Ishvara, Paramatma, Bhagavan, whatever you may call it, what does it really mean? What it really means is that the qualities of Ishvara should be given to me. They should be mine. What are the qualities of Ishvara? Most important one is Sat Swarupa, the one which does not disappear, does not change, is not coming and going, but has the stability. Sat Swarupa. And Ananda Swarupa. The Sat Swarupa doesn't mean anything until that Sat is also giving me the blessings that I need, that I'm happy all the time. This is what we seek. So Vedanta, the teaching, Sadashiva Samarambham, what Shiva teaches is, my dear person, I'm happy you're seeking me, but please understand that I am your real nature. So you should know that seeking me, the Ishvara, and seeking your own reality of your own self is one and the same. This you should understand. So this is what the second line of this verse says. Aham Brahma eva aham atas siddham. And so what it means is that I should see that I am the Sat Swarupa. I alone have the Sat Swarupa. So, as we'll probably give this we'll spend this more time in this, elucidating this, but very briefly, in the Chandogya Upanishad, when the student was sent by his father to study with a teacher, and he came back with very well equipped with all the Vedic rituals, the various Vedangas, and mastering the language. In other words, all worldly jnanam, paurushaya jnanam. And then he was proud, Shvetaketu. And so his father, Uddalaka, and in fact he did not even bow down to his father when he came, didn't do namaskara. He was very happy that his father sent him, but now he thinks that he is very well equipped with every knowledge. And his father, of course, knew that all of the worldly knowledge is just but a preparation. This is what you are apparently seeking, but not really seeking. So to underscore that, he casually asked Shvetaketu, not casually, but very gently. He says, I'm very happy that you came back after spending 10 years or whatever in the Gurukulam, and I'm very proud of all the things you've accomplished. You've been a very good student. I'm very happy. But tell me, did your teacher tell you about the one thing, just one thing? Because you've studied many, many different things. But I want to ask you whether your teacher told you that one thing by knowing which everything might as well be known. So Shvetaketu said, Sir, I don't think so. I don't remember him ever giving me that instruction. And my only inference is that I was one of the best students in his class and he wanted to give everything to me, but he probably didn't know that himself, otherwise he would have told me that. And in fact, can you please? So his entire ego just went down and He bowed now to his father and said, "Can you please impart that for me?" This is a very important example, Vedic example. This is a Vedic example. Because really the examples that we should learn from should be Vedantic examples, like the rope and the snake, the 10th man. And this is also another example. The reason I want to point this out here at this juncture is by knowing that I am the Sat, my entire life, my attitude towards everything can change dramatically. My attitude of seeking temporary happiness, of begging for independence from the world, of transactional non-truth, all of those kinds of things will just go out of the window. If I knew just one thing, that I am the Sat Swarupa. And by knowing this, you should see that there's only one Sat. You cannot have multiple Sats, because the very definition of Sat is one that never changes, which is obviously formless. There can be only one formless Sat. So what that means is that if I know that I am the Sat Swarupa, my attitude towards everybody else is also changes. Because I find that others that I deal with, transact with, are nothing but myself alone. Only one Sat Swarupa. This is a very important example. That really speaking, so therefore this closes the loop that seeking Ishvara, seeking stability, seeking Anandarupam is the same thing as seeking the self, which is I am the very Sat Swarupa. This should become very clear to the Vedantic students. So if this is the case, how is it that I don't know that I am the Sat Swarupa? What is it that I need to do or to know? So this is now the part that we are looking at. That somehow I am mixing up things. I am mixing up Sat and Asat in a way that the mithya takes over my thinking, my life. That I give reality to things that are really dependent on me. And don't lead to any lasting happiness. So this kind of aviveka, confusion, is at the heart of why is it that I cannot see the Sat. So the answer is that you just have to see where you are making a mistake and systematically remove the points of confusion. By seeing that there is something more than yourself as a jiva, which you are. You are not just a jiva. You're not just a limited person. In fact, your sense of limitation, as we have talked, I'm just summarizing all this, nothing dramatically new, that your sense of limitation, of jivatvam, is a superimposition on yourself, on Ishvara, on Brahman, on Bhagavan. So you don't have to reach out to Bhagavan. It's just that you just have to see that your continuous denial of this beautiful truth is to be examined, to be explored. And in the beginning we say, please see, you are the Sakshi. Remember, we have taken some, in the previous classes we went over this, that really there is a kind of like a beginning Vedanta and a more advanced Vedanta. So in the beginning Vedanta, which is very proper and okay, there's nothing wrong with that, but there is just an initial phase. You just look upon yourself as a Sakshi. I am unconcerned with what I am looking at, which is true. But here's the issue that comes up. You get some satisfaction out of the fact that I'm the Sakshi, and you also get affirmation of that from Shruti Vakyas, that you are the Sakshi, you are the Sakshi. But then my thinking stops. Stops in the sense that I am the Sakshi, but it doesn't seem to be, I'm still facing issues and problems in my life, even though I am not supposed to. So there's something that I'm not doing right. What is it? How do I go around that? So this is where the advanced Vedanta steps in and says that do not stop your thinking by saying, I am the Sakshi, I am the Sakshi. Because being the witness or the Sakshi does have a great value, but it is extremely incomplete. It is like a step, one step out of many that you need to take. To do what? What steps? Where are they leading me? They're leading me in what I need to do is to understand the enormity and the profundity of being the Sakshi. There is a lot behind it that I have not explored yet. So the Sakshi here, in the very first thing that we saw in this series of classes, is called Apaurusheya Jnanam. So Apaurusheya Jnanam means, or now we will remove the prefix and just call it Jnanam. Not Prajnanam, no Vijnanam, no Apaurusheya Jnanam, just Jnanam. This Jnanam that I am, and I don't get it, is Parameshwara. This is not generated by human beings. It is the part and parcel of life itself. It is the very content. Not as though it began with taking a form as a baby, or even as in the beginning of conception. No. You cannot create this. It is already there. Conception and birth and death and so on happens within it. That remains the same, this jnanam. So we need to understand the enormous implications, the power of the Sakshi. So this series of discourses that I discovered in one of the books of Swami Akhandananda, it's a very beautiful list of these enormous, profound powers of the Sakshi, and allows us to hone in on systematically, one step at a time, what are the implications? Why is it so powerful? So the first thing that we saw in the last class, that the jnanam, same thing as Sakshi, same thing as Brahman, same thing as Ishvara, same thing as Atma, only one thing, different names. This jnanam. And so the very labeling of jnanam as apaurushaya jnanam is very helpful, very significant. Because normally I think about knowledge as human knowledge, jiva knowledge, jiva jnanam, jivatvam. What do I know? That person doesn't know this. Now I acquired that knowledge, application of that knowledge. We are all very familiar with it. This is how we look at jnana. But this one should be classified, segmented, articulated as apaurushaya jnana. Is something which is not mine, which is common to everyone, and in fact is Ishvara. So we want to call it apaurushaya jnanam, it is Ishvara, it is Brahman. Already there. This I have to see. So therefore the lakshana of this jnanam, the uniqueness of this jnanam has to be understood in all of its various facets. So the first thing that we saw is jnanam, this jnanam, apaurushaya jnanam, it has swata pramanam, natu parataha pramanam. This is the first point. So you can even make a list in your notebook and then revise it from time to time. This is where we make mistakes. So we have to understand the points where we make a mistake and reverse it. So the first point we saw, which is what we are now finishing up today, is jnanam is swata pramanam. So we need to understand the implications of that. And we did that in the last class. The implications of that are that the entire Srishti will not work. So this is how we have to understand the nature of Ishvara Srishti, the nature of my life, everybody's life. This is where we have to understand. None of it will work, none of it will even function if the jnanam was not swata pramanam. Why not? Because everything needs a proof. The whole life resolves around proofs, pramanams. Is there somebody there? Is that thing valid? That validity of the presence of things and people and situations and so on, if there is no proof of it, then we cannot function in our life. Consider that. Just think about it. There's no ideas, there's no finality of anything, there is no presence of things, there is no utility of things, because it's all without proof. So then there is successive proofs. We saw that your eyes can see something, and that can be proven by your eyes because you trust your eyes. Eyes are a pramanam for rupam. Rupam drishyam lochanam drik. So drik here means pramanam. But this pramanam itself is not final because, as we saw, the eyes can be seeing something, but unless the mind is also there, it doesn't mean anything because you apparently don't see anything. You see some people pass by, and but your mind was someplace else. So the eyes themselves need to be revalidated by the mind. Then the mind can also be, as we saw earlier in the last class, the mind can also be just notional. I think so. But that notion may or may not be the truth. So the buddhi has to be done. So the buddhi is the one which is Vijnanamaya kosha, which is where the presence of the jiva, aham buddhi, this is me, has also a thought, this is me. So that is the validating point to the manaha. But is the buddhi also self-validating? It cannot be, because the buddhi also disappears. It comes and goes. The buddhi during 8 hours of your dream is different from the buddhi in your waking state. In sleep, it completely disappears. So it's a very funny buddhi because Vijnanamaya kosha, that I thought, buddhi means I thought, that I thought is a very funny one because that also keeps changing. Because, so what happens is that in our life, we have different Vijnanamaya koshas. I am a child. I'm in first grade. Now I'm a high schooler. Now I'm an adult. Now I'm a middle-aged. Now I'm old. All of these keep on changing. But who's that I? Because when you say I'm old, I'm young or something, it must be the same person. Because if the young person is different from the old person, you ask somebody, were you young at one time? And he says, I don't understand what your question is. I am what I am now. I was never young. So the whole life will just collapse. Nothing will function. So behind all these changes is the Paurusheya Jnanam, which is I. And we don't explore that. We don't look into that. So all we are saying is that Pramanyam, the very proofness of life finally has to stop at the jnanam level. And the jnanam, the apaurushaya jnanam, the atma, the sakshi, does not need a proof. Because if that also needed a proof, then something else has to validate it. And the whole life will be in a perpetual state of suspension. Nothing will get clinched. I remember Swami Dayananda using that word when he first explained this to us. Life cannot be clinched. Clinched in the meaning that it doesn't work. It's kind of like you inquire into something and people say, well, we are still looking at it. We cannot tell. Like sometimes that happens in unsolved murders. That happens in unsolved murders because the family of the people or somebody that might have been murdered has, of course, the dukkha of losing a loved one. But if the loved one cannot be found or who did it, then the dukkha is even more expanded. And so you ask somebody, are you looking at it? Have you found the murderer? Have you found the body? Do you know what happened? They'll say, no, we're looking at it. We are getting a little closer, but we cannot tell you. So that means that this has not been clinched yet because nothing has been proven. The proof is not there, you see? And finally, when somebody comes up and that happens these days with all the advanced DNA sampling and so on, they are able to tell that yes, this was the person. He or she was killed here, and so on. So then there is some finality of knowledge that yes, this is what happened. In that particular case, the basic dukkha is still there, but at least that uncertainty is gone. So similarly, if the jnanam is not swatasiddha, is not swatapramanyam, nothing will work. It's like saying we're looking into it. Yeah, I have to lead a life, and we do, because of swatapramanyam. So this is the final authority for validating. So now you see, this is the first point of the power of the Sakshi. Not just see the difference there. It's not just a witness. Because when we say, I'm a Sakshi, that helps in doing some meditation. It says, I'm not my thoughts. I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm just a Sakshi. It helps. But the profundity of that is missing unless you inquire further. So this is the first step of the inquiry. That my gosh, imagine the implication of this. You know what the implications are? Incredible. The implications are, I am the final authority for validating the world. This is the truth. And my mind has to grow up to grasp at this enormity. That's all that needs to be done. I think the example that our acharyas give of someone. It's like a more of a modern example, but it has links to the more traditional examples like that also. But the modern example is that one day you are some poor person gets a knock on the door and says, "Are you such and such person?" So you say, "Yes, what is it that you want?" And he says, "I have some very amazing news for you. Your grand aunt died recently and left you with $1 billion. So first of all, you don't believe it. You say, "Is this just some kind of a scam or whatever?" But supposing you validate all of that, you find no, this is true, and then you actually are given the keys to the bank account for $1 billion and so on. But this is what the acharyas say very beautifully. I think this is a very good point. Does your attitude change about your life instantly after being given the key to $1 billion? No. It has to be absorbed. There is a minor example, not a minor, but separate example to that is that really your food that you eat doesn't benefit you until you are able to digest it. Yeah, it gives you instant freedom from hunger. You are very hungry and now you are looking for some food and you have a glass of water and so on. But nothing has happened yet. But then the digestion starts and slowly extracts the nutrients. This is where the benefit to your body occurs. Similarly to that is just by listening to the news is a start. But until you digest it, absorb it, and so one can say that in the case of this poor person who was given $1 billion, they will hesitantly change their lifestyle because they're not sure, is this really true? And how am I going to do it? What am I going to do with $1 billion? And it's very interesting that if somebody approaches them, this is what happens in our aim for seva. It's very interesting, really speaking. This is what they say, that a person is as rich as what the person is comfortable in getting separated from. So you may have a bank account of $20 million, but if we approach you for donation for aim for seva, and you can easily give more, but you give $100. We have seen these examples. That means you are not rich, you are poor. Because you haven't digested your $20 million. And the opposite example is there. You have somebody who has less than $1 million in savings, but they are so generous that sometimes I have to feel, why does this person give so much money? Why? Amazing. Because the digestion has taken place. So going back to our example, the enormity of the Sakshi. You are the one who's validating the whole world. You are. The world is waiting for you. And you bless it and says, okay. Somebody says, I'm going to create a lot of problems for you. I'm coming at you. You bless it. Say, okay, come at me. This is exactly what happens. I bless my dreams. I continue to bless the waking state. I bless it. I validate it. But our mind doesn't accept it yet. So the entire profundity of the Sakshi, of the Jnanam, has to be absorbed. I should start at least thinking about it. So this is the first point. So what is the first point? Jnanam is swatapramanam, natu parataha pramanam. It's not an ordinary thing. We have to really become, this is what mananam or bhakti or all of those things are important, because I'm being told the truth, but I now have to. The Atma Kripa has to happen. Okay, so now I think we have covered the point number 1. Okay, let's go to point number 2. Jnanam is swayam prakashita. Number 2, Jnanam is swayam prakashita. Jnanam is self-illuminating. So you can substitute, if you feel more comfortable with Jnanam, to say Sakshi, you can do that. Atma, you can substitute it with Atma, self, I. Really, ultimately, what it means is, I am self-illuminating. This is the second point. What this means is that Jnanam is not dependent upon a doer, any instruments of action, upon action itself and the results of the action. It is not dependent on that. It is swayam prakashita. So to illustrate this, let us look at an example of a conclusion about some one thing. And the conclusion is that if you're going on a relatively dark area and somewhere which is not familiar to you, supposing you're going on a street and it has some foliage and you're going alone, and it is relatively late at night, and there is some light, but not a lot of light. That's the setup for this illustration. So there you're already a little bit concerned that you are alone and there could be some other people around who can take advantage of you, and so on. You already have that thought in your mind, and I hope I'm okay. There's a short area, some short street that you have to cross over to get to a lighted area where you really want to go. But this is kind of like an uncertain area. This is what it is. There you found that the workers had cut down a tree. It had cut down the upper branches, but the stump of the tree was left for later cutting down. I went through the same thing in our garden about 7-8 years ago. So I have a bunch of trees that what is it called? It's the it's the flowering plum. Beautiful purple colored leaves. You may have experience with that. And I put it on my driveway when we first built the home back in 1985. And then the trees grew a lot. And it was starting to obstruct my view of the bay. But that was okay, then not a problem. But then the trees started to die because they have a life of about 35 years. And pretty soon we actually called an arborist and say, what's happening there? This is, sir, this is the life. So there's nothing you can do. You just have to remove them. So I had my own gardener with his tools. So what he did was he cut them, but left the stumps behind a bush because he says to uproot it completely, it's very expensive. And the tree is now dead. And so the stump can remain. I remember that so well. I still have it here. If you ever come to my home, I can show it to you. And so the illustration is that you come across a dark street and you see a stump of a tree. Now, when you see a stump of a tree, different ideas come in your mind about what it is. And the different ideas are dependent on who you are. If you are with other people, you're not afraid of the stump. If you are alone, then you may be afraid of the stump and mistake it. You might mistake it for a potential robber. You might mistake it for a policeman. Or just another living being standing there, not really threatening or anything like that. You know, so often sometimes the stump has an upper area which may have some leaves or something. It looks exactly like a human being in dark, not in light. So that conclusion, that notion is dependent on the doer. And so Swami Akhandananda pointed out in this case that we do for religious purposes, we take some form. We can even do it with some turmeric. And we invoke Ganesha to it. We consider that as Ganesha. So the Vigraha remains the same. Similarly, you can take a metal one and it is just a metal Vigraha or a wooden Vigraha. But then you have an invocation, your ideas are completely different. You start to offer flowers to it, you pray every day, and you think upon that as nothing but the power of Ganesha or Vishnu or Shiva or someone else. It all depends upon your ideas, just like you took the stump as something else. But this creative notion, and so Swamiji says that this is exactly what happens, that sometimes these personal ideas become shared with others, and then it becomes part and parcel of your life. It becomes very, very real, as though. This is how religions are born. New religions come about, that you just start to consider something and start to have a whole religious community around it. That can all happen. So he says here from his notes, all these creations can be individual or of a sampradaya or of a class of people, as can be specific to a nation. And it can be and is different from each other. So a flag of a nation, for example, has a certain meaning for the inhabitants of that nation. So all that depends upon is depending on the doer, instruments of action, and the results. But jnanam is the same for everyone. It is not dependent on a person, a conclusion, a notion. So the stump of a tree, no matter what you take it to be, depending on the time of the day, it remains the same. So this is what is called Vastu Tantra, as we have seen before. Notions are Kartru Tantra. The truth is Vastu Tantra. So this is the meaning of Swayam Prakashita. It is what it is, and it is very beautiful. And yet, because I do not see it with the light of the proper knowledge, I mistake it. And this is exactly what happens. That I should be very satisfied and happy with my reality. But because I don't understand my reality very well, I mistake it for the fact that I am, now you can fill in the blank. I am this, I am that, I am happy, I'm unhappy, I am wanting, I am proud, I'm satisfied. All kinds of notions about myself take place. But the jnanam is not dependent on the people. It is what it is, which is very beautiful. Swayam Prakashita, self-illumining. And here it's interesting. Swami Akhananda says, so this is very, very revealing. Just look at it. So someone might say, okay, this apaurushaya jnanam that you talk about, so this was created by Ishvara? Must have been created by Ishvara, if that's what you're saying, not created by human beings. Created by Ishvara? The answer is no. It cannot be created by the Ishvara. The answer is very obvious. Why the no answer is obvious? If Ishvara did not have the jnanam already there, how would he create jnanam? This conscious entity, Brahman, is already there. So the Ishvara is also not the creator of jnanam. Ishvara is jnanam. Always there. And always there for everyone at all times. Just close your eyes and say, I know. I know. That is the jnana. Swayam prakashita, self-illumining. It is not, as we saw in the last class, it is not sadhya. It's not even to be introduced or created by even Vedanta. It's already there. Vedanta also depends on that jnana. Teaching depends on the jnana. Always jnana is already there. This I have to see. And unmanifest. This is the issue. I am always looking for myself in a manifested way. Who am I? What am I doing? Behind that there is an unmanifested. I, jnanam, swayam prakashita. So therefore it is svatasiddha. It is siddha. It's already there. Not sadhya. Doesn't need any sadhana. The only sadhana one can think of is the absorption. So this is the second point about jnanam. So the first one was Swata Pramanyam, Swata Pramanaha, and the second one is Swayam Prakashita. It has its own light, doesn't depend on anything. It can be discovered, not discovered, but it is already there. So this is the second point. And so we'll close the class of that. And I will resume this tour of the Aparushaya Jnanam with number 3, and that the title of the number 3, which we will do next week, is Jnanam Kalataha Aparichinnaha. Jnanam Kalataha Aparichinnaha. Meaning, jnanam is not limited by time. So this will be a beautiful analysis, and I look forward to discussing that with you in the next class. So with that, let me close this class. Om Asatoma Satgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. I don't know why that happens. I just don't see the chat. You know what? Let me reset it, go back again to see if I can capture it. I don't see anybody in the chat window. Yeah. The only two people that I see is Poonam Yadav and Raj Velpuri. So something happens where the chats are not shown, even though I see there's about 19 people, and now Satish Jalota. And so 19, 20 people are watching, but anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. And Shri is now on. So no questions in the queue. Thank you, Anne Shri. So with that, I take your leave for today, and we will resume it. Let's see. Today is the 5th. Yeah, I think we're okay with the next week. It's the following week that we will not have it. I think so. Because Swami Sachidananda is coming. I believe that's 2 weeks from today. And next week should be okay. All right, so I'll see you then. Hari Om.